Carol here. Today I would like to begin by quoting Eckhart Tolle. He was recorded at some seminar and it was posted on YouTube by Mental Shift. Eckhart Tolle, The Essence of Peace. And he's discussing ways of awakening. And he says you don't need to suffer or to wait for physical death or to have a near-death experience in order to awaken. And anyway, those methods of awakening don't necessarily give you awakening. And by awakening, here we mean disidentification from all the conditioned mind patterns that we have. And when you disidentify from the conditioned mind patterns, you find peace, as in when people go into near-death experiences and they're separated from their bodies. Many of you may have read accounts of this or heard people talking about it. It's pretty common. So we know that these people are in complete bliss and happiness, and they don't necessarily feel the need to go back into their bodies anymore because they're so blissful, happy, and peaceful. And in fact, really nothing we do in life, nothing we attain is really worth that much unless we have peace. Because without peace, nothing you attain is really worth that much. So the premise here is that we all want peace. And when Eckhart discusses in this particular talk that there are ways of getting at one being near-death experiences or intense suffering. And regarding the suffering, he goes on to explain at 23 minutes that some humans, through intense mental and emotional suffering, to a point where it becomes unbearable, these people then suddenly, they have something within them that collapses. And it's comparable to a physical death, but it's rather a psychological death. It is a collapse of the psychological structure of me that has created so much suffering for myself that it can't sustain itself anymore. And it, so to speak, auto-destructs. And then kind of like an explosion or a bridge that has been hit with the wind. The velocity of the wind is such that the bridge is going up and down at its resonant frequency, and pretty soon the inner workings of the bridge is not strong enough to sustain the resonant pattern of this up and down motion. It's like a loop. It keeps going up and down, over and over like a loop. So the structure can't sustain that anymore because its energy is too much for the bridge's joints and connections. And so the bridge self-destructs. And in the same way, our body-mind, when it is presented with a unbearable emotional, mental thought pattern that is in a loop, well, that body-brain can no longer sustain itself. And so it auto-destructs. And what you see is, I'll list some things that people label this auto-destruction of the psychological state. They call it a mental breakdown. Some may call it schizophrenia, the type of schizophrenia that's temporary, because like me, you might hear voices for a time, but then they fade away after a few years or so, and then you come out more wise. And so that this is something that's caused by a breakdown of your psychological structure that causes you to disidentify from all your conditioned mind patterns. And when you disidentify from all your conditioned mind patterns, many things can manifest. You can become peaceful like Eckhart Tolle did after his mental breakdown. peaceful and quiet and slowly reassimilated into a more unified, harmonious quantum improvement over your previous mental state and mental patterns. Or you can maybe not be so proactive, and then the random things that come up out of that might be voices that talk, and they may be good voices or bad voices. And without, a bit of order, and you can go the wrong way also. But I think that's more of a rare case, and I think most people out of a mental breakdown will come out of it better, with a better, more truthful, useful conditioned mind pattern that will allow you to live with more peace, and so that you prevent that suffering from happening again. And then another label we put on these psychological deaths would be meltdowns or crying spells. So meltdowns is usually tagged onto autistics or Aspergers when they're young, and they break down and start crying, and it may be in an inappropriate place. But what's happening is that their ability to sustain their intense suffering, whether it's from fluorescent lights combined with intense sounds that cause ear pain, whatever, they can't help it anymore. It's like the natural tendency of the body to expel this negativity comes in the breath, and you will then feel yourself uncontrollably crying. Like your diaphragm will automatically, beyond any control you can put on it, start to push out like this. And my nose is a little stopped up, so you'll be able to hear me do this. It's a yoga exercise, and it also is what happens when you laugh uncontrollably or begin to have either a meltdown or a crying spell where you can't stop the tears. And here it is. Okay, now I'm going to exhale. I'm going push, 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 push. And I'm pushing out the air as if I was pushing out negative energy. It's an expulsion of everything inside you. And this uncontrollable action of the diaphragm is the body's way of initiating this meltdown, this crying spell, which does many things for the body to help it. It erases any current thought conditioned mind patterns. And so it's kind of like if you have a guitar string that's ringing really loud at a tone you don't like, the outside process that your body provides is to dampen that string with another frequency that will cause that string to stop ringing. Like if you put your hand on it, it'll stop ringing. This is like putting your hand on a ringing string. It takes that mental pattern and quiets it down. And in younger children they may scream when they're doing it, but as we get older, we learn not to activate our vocal cords while it's happening, and then that's called a crying spell, where a woman might be having PMS and something upsets her because of an overwhelming, unbearable emotional and mental pattern in her brain. So she'll go into a bathroom stall. I mean, this is a good thing, and allow that crying to come, cry, 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 and then at the end, when that emotional, mental, intense pattern is killed, it's collapsed, then you're allowed for the moment after crying to disidentify from all the conditioned mind patterns that caused it. And then you're in a state of quiescence and peace. And same with the meltdown for a young autistic child. After you allow them to finish crying and finish the reaction of quelling is the word, quenching, whatever, getting rid of the fire, then they come out of it calm and peaceful. And now you're in a prime state to allow yourself to rebuild your mental patterns in a better way. And so every time a woman, I say a woman because women are, it's more accepted for them to cry, and maybe they have a biological ability to cry more. It might be due to the hormonal fluctuations. It is for me, I know that. And when I allow myself to cry, when I come into these unbearable situations, you have to allow yourself, because if you don't, you're going to cry anyway and it'll be very embarrassing. So you need to exit the situation and then allow yourself to cry. Even if I hurt myself physically with pain, stub my toe or something, if I can go into the bathroom and allow myself to cry, to allow that, because it hurts, and it's like unbearable and you just can't accept it. So I allow myself to cry for as long as I need. It's usually about a minute for pain. It's longer for psychological upsets. I think the longest I've ever cried was about an hour. And then you come out of the crying and the pain's gone. I mean, literally, the pain in my stub toe, until I can get to the bathroom and cry for a minute, it's going to hurt. But as soon as I go to the bathroom and cry for a minute and just feel the pain and just don't accept it and cry, and push it out with my lungs, like that, in a natural way, because your body does it for you, then the pain seems to diminish. I guess it's because your body knows that it doesn't need to send you pain signals anymore, because you got it, because you put your consciousness on the pain, and you're gonna, okay, you got the message, now send all the repair proteins to the toe and everything's happening the way it's supposed to. You don't need to send any more pain signals, but it's going to send pain signals until you do something about it. You got to tell your brain to go repair it, and until you send that signal to repair it, it's going to hurt. Of course, this is just a loose philosophy to explain my own personal experience. It may be different for others. Now, the meltdown for autistics will, in that sense, allow the quiescence needed to reemerge into the world and have the opportunity to create a better conditioned mind pattern, a more useful one. And when this happens to adults, the major breakdown that may happen in one's 20s, or I think for women it might happen later in life, maybe even in their 50s, they then emerge from that with a awakened mind that then you can rebuild upon it a more improved, more peace-inducing view of yourself and the world. So you'll still have a conditioned mind pattern that you operate under, which we all must. It's called our ego that helps us survive, but it can be re-engineered to a more habitually more peaceful attitude. Now, saying all this because I want to point out that meltdowns are the universe's gift of life to us, in the way that suffering is a gift to all of us to awaken to a life of peace, which you can't really do without suffering. You have to know what suffering is in order to not want to suffer. So the people that have suffered the most are often the most spiritually aware and the most kind, compassionate, and helpful human beings. And one example would be, Eckhart Tolle teaches how he suffered immeasurably when he was in his 20s, and then his psychological breakdown occurred where it was, I think with him it was more internal and silent. Like you wouldn't look at him and say, oh, you're having a breakdown. No, it was more just, the electrical currents couldn't sustain themselves, so maybe they subsided, and then he was in a state of peace. So it would be kind of like maybe the circuits burned out, just like whatever that loop was that was making them suffer, the structure couldn't sustain it anymore. And so it just kind of burned out. Maybe one brain cell died because it was, whatever that fuse was, that one brain cell just died and it lost its ability to continue. And so then he felt this intense peace and slowly came out of it, wrote a book about it, meditated on it, and slowly re-entered the world to then later teach about it and become one of the greatest living humans of all time, and if you measure someone's greatness by how much they help others attain joy and happiness and peace. So we salute our beloved Eckhart Tolle for doing this for us. Now I'm here to just share my own realization about how meltdowns are many psychological breakdowns, and crying spells are also many psychological breakdowns that we must embrace and cherish as nature's gift to us to help us attain peace and help us understand and learn who we really are and let go of some of the conditioned mind patterns that are actually false, that actually lead to such suffering. If you study chaos theory and other systems theories, you come across the inevitability of chaos in making quantum leaps to better systems. So if you have a system that's stuck in a certain loop, like say a city with very poorly built roads to where the traffic patterns are really bad, the only way to really cure it is to have a natural disaster hit, because no one will do it on their own, obviously, because you don't want to hurt anyone. But if a natural disaster hits, only then will the chaos given by that natural disaster allow for a clean slate in order to rebuild a better way. And the psychological breakdown is like that natural disaster or storm that wipes out what's not working and then allows you to restructure, using the best of what you had, but replacing the part that wasn't working with parts that are working, so that you then have a quantum leap in improving of your mental state. And then you'll go forth the rest of your life with an awakened or partially awakened mind. There may be more than one psychological breakdown. And I believe that when people take DMT, they're doing this. They're allowing the temporary breakdown for the 10-second periods that that you were feeling the effect. Or maybe it's 10 minutes. Yeah, I stand corrected. It's 10 minutes. Very short period of time where you're disoriented and you're seeing, your mind is just kind of seeing random things, and it interprets it as like limbic memories of lizards, maybe from our limbic brains past, the vision of the lizard. People that do DMT say they see lizards and reptilian structures. And I believe that's from the brain. It can be explained by us, our brain coming from the lizard. That's how we evolved. And so those structures are there that give rise to that view of a lizard, I guess, because it's so archetypal, it has to be somehow imprinted in there. Or it might be imprinted in the Akashic field. Who knows? It's beyond our ability to know that with our current instruments. So, so DMT is probably an induced psychological breakdown, so that when you come out of it, you might have a chance of rewiring in a better way. And that is why my hypothesis, I guess, is that why this works, why DMT works to help people recover from PTSD, and it does help people recover from PTSD. There's research studies beyond the shadow of a doubt, it's indisputable, that it helps many, I think it's like 90% or something success rate. The people that are having PTSD, either PTSD from the war, PTSD from childhood abuse, that's like pervasive, they take DMT, it may be 1 session, 2 sessions, or maybe it's 5 sessions, but it's a finite number of sessions with a trained psychologist, and you erase and restructure, and you do it with this supervision so that you, I guess, have the opportunity when you're in your DMT trip or whatever it's called to be conscious of what your intention is to see the world in a better way, not in a worse way. So you don't allow the lizards to scare you, because you just have to face them. Something like that. I don't want to get into a talk about DMT because I'm not an expert, but I've just listened to people talking about it, and I've read some papers on how it helped people. Bottom line is, and it helps them. They come out of it with their DMT series of sessions, and then they're just not depressed anymore, and it lasts over a year or two, and maybe even longer. I don't know if they followed them beyond 2 years, but it's like a permanent change. And so it's a psychological death that allows a collapse of your non-useful structure, so that you can come out of it with, you disassociate from your mind patterns, just even for 10 minutes, with the DMT trip. And I guess if you drink DMT ayahuasca, then you it lasts for a whole day. Maybe you just need to do it once and you don't ever have to do it again. But everyone that's ever done it seems to say that it changed their life, And then the few that have bad experiences are because they're doing it irresponsibly without supervision and stuff like that. Or maybe they didn't do any pre-preparation work. Okay, so thank you for letting me share my thoughts with you on the benefits and the gift of mental breakdowns, meltdowns, and crying spells, and your DMT trip. And when we know that they're here for a reason, we can embrace them and respect them, and even invite them. And even when I get a crying spell, and I'm saying this is a good thing, that I realize that it's a good thing. And I quickly go into a bathroom to be alone, or a bedroom, or wherever I can, and allow it to happen, because this is God's gift to me. It's going to move that negative stuff out. And you may think, oh, crying, I don't want to cry, but it's life's ecstasy moving through you to make for a better world for you. And thank you, God, for Cosmind, for giving us these tools and mana from the heavens, to help us rewire for a more peaceful and aware state. Thank you so much for letting me share my thoughts with you, and I wish you peace always.